The idea of manifestation can be traced back to the 1800s, but it's recently gained newfound popularity online. Though it may be easy to dismiss as a sham, the practice of speaking about your desires can be a powerful tool to reach your goals. Doty says the technique that's often associated with manifestation is to utilize your sensory organs, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin, to rewire your brain.
And what I mean by that is through repetition, you lay down neural pathways. And this idea of what fires together, wires together. And so I would make lists of what I wanted and write them down. Then I would read them silently. Then I would read them aloud. Then I would visualize myself being in that position over and over and over again.
Which embeds the intention into your mind. It uses a neural process called value tagging.
Through our sensory organs, we have about 100 million bits of information coming to us every second, yet we're only able to process 50 to 100 on a conscious level. The vast majority go to maintaining homeostasis of our bodily functions. But on a conscious level, you have the ability to embed consciously thoughts into your subconscious. When you daydream or mind wander, you activate something called your default mode network. And this is self-referential, and it paints a picture of who you see yourself or want to be or what you want. And once you do that and you have a definition of what it is you intend or see yourself as, then this activates something called your salience network.
The salience network helps the brain filter and prioritize information. By constantly envisioning what you want, the network is alerted to focus on it. Doty compares it to a filing cabinet and a bloodhound.
You are able to place your intention into the filing cabinet. The bloodhound looks at the filing cabinet and then is constantly activated to run around to see what it might be possible to help you manifest.
Meaning that if you're doing a different task, your subconscious stays focused on the intention you've connected importance to.
If it's loud and somebody says your name, you still turn to your name, right? Even though normally, if that wasn't your name, you wouldn't turn to it at all. You wouldn't even hear it. And that's because your identity is deeply embedded and defines who you are. So your subconscious is always turned on. And so if you value tag correctly, your subconscious is always on the alert to activate your consciousness to actually manifest it. And this is where the executive control network comes in. If you're stressed and anxious, the ability to access prior memory or experience, or listen, if you will, to your subconscious clearly is limited. If you're in the right mental state, or if you're in the parasympathetic nervous system activation state, then you're attuned to this, and actually that acts as the CEO, if you will, to make it happen.
Doty says that manifestation often gets confused with the idea that the cosmos has deemed you worthy or that the stars have aligned. The reality is that there's no external factor that's granting your deepest wishes. This practice, at its core, is focusing enough on what you want that you begin to recognize the opportunities around you. You still have to put in the legwork, but the true power of manifesting is all in your head.
The common saying, beauty is pain, may make you think of uncomfortable shoes or an itchy sweater, but the truth is much more serious.
So we've been using toxic chemicals in our fashion products for hundreds of years. Everybody's heard of the Mad Hatter. That's because hatters used mercury to make men's hats. And I mean, a lot of mercury, like 1% weight of the hat when they were tested recently, which is crazy. And then chemists invented a new color green that was based on arsenic. So people were wearing ball gowns and wreaths with green arsenic pigment. One young woman who was making these wreaths actually ended up dying from arsenic poisoning.
That's Alden Wicker, award-winning journalist and author of To Die For: How Toxic Fashion is Making Us Sick. After using mercury and arsenic, chemists created fossil fuel dyes using coal tar. Wicker says this invention propelled us into a new world of chemistry, leading to the creation of contact poisons.
There was shoe blacking that would poison people within a few hours when they put it on their shoes and then went out dancing in them. We've been doing this for quite some time, and people would have reactions to their fancy striped socks where they'd get stripy pustules across their ankles.
And our fashion today isn't much better. Various studies, including a 2022 paper published in PLOS ONE, have found toxic heavy metals in our fabrics. These include lead and cancer-causing metals, such as cadmium and chromium. Wicker says BPA, which is classified as an endocrine-disrupting chemical that interferes with our hormones, is also commonly found in workout gear, like sports bras and polyester spandex socks.
We want to think that we learned our lesson, but a lot of these things have been voluntarily phased out. And when things are being made in countries with really lax regulations, it's actually not illegal to put these things on clothing and sell it to adult consumers in the United States. Our closets are filled with 100 different things that we wear all the time. And sometimes, like I said, it can take 2 or 3 days for a reaction to show up to clothing that you've put on your body. So some people, they end up going to the dermatologist, they get an allergy test, and some chemicals that are in fashion do come up as causing them an allergic reaction.
In researching her book, Wicker discovered that having constant contact with clothes that cause allergic reactions can spiral your health problems. If you don't make a change, the reactions can evolve into chronic inflammation and increase your risk for autoimmune disorders. Wicker founded an online international guide on sustainable and ethical fashion called EcoHub to help consumers. She hopes this information will one day be standard practice in the fashion industry.
We need actual ingredient lists on our clothing that shows us everything. We need to have the information and the transparency. We need more protection.
In 2019, a researcher in China was sentenced to 3 years in prison after helping to produce genetically altered babies. He had modified genes in human embryos, hoping to create a resistance to HIV that will be passed down through generations. After news of this experiment spread, a group of prominent scientists, including those who helped develop CRISPR technology, called for a temporary international ban on genetically modifying eggs, sperm, or embryos. This group argued that proper regulations and procedures must be established before research continued. In the meantime, McNally says gene editing experiments have moved into different models.
I feel like the field has really moved towards thinking about doing gene editing in somebody who's already born. I feel like that's where the field is right now. And notice I'm not saying adults, because I think there still are children that are really who you would take the risk of doing this type of therapy for a child who has a bad disease and you have a capacity to change a life and save a life. You would take that risk. We do that all the time in medicine. We undergo difficult surgeries. We do all sorts of things knowing that we're placing that child at risk because we see a reasonable hope of treating that person.
Though we'd all like to believe that any FDA-approved treatment is only going to help us, we gamble with our health every time we undergo surgery, get a CT scan, or even take antibiotics. McNally says the advantages of gene editing are endless, but the technology isn't perfect.
I think what people see as the big risk right now is what's the fidelity of your genetic correction approach? Can you do it precisely? Can you do it, meaning you're going to hit only that target that you want to hit? No bystander off-target effects, and can you do it efficiently? In other words, if you're only fixing 1 out of every 100 cells and you need to fix 90 out of 100 cells to get an effect, well, then that's not good enough. So it has to do with how efficient it is and how precise it is.
While there are many upsides to this technology, McNally argues that at the end of the day, it's not above other scientific innovations.
I think it's important to avoid genetic exceptionalism. There's this long history of genetics as being treated as this very special thing and that it has to have different rules around it. But I think we want to continually apply what our standards for medical practice, which is we take risk when it's worth risk. And it depends what that benefit is.
However, McNally says there is one case in which genetic exceptionalism applies, and that's when gene editing can potentially alter the outcome of future generations.
So you may not be changing just that one person in front of you. You could be changing future generations. If you have also changed their germline, if you've changed the sperm and the eggs that make up that individual, you're not making that decision for one person, you're making that decision potentially for many. And that is different than anything we've ever had to deal with before. So that's why it's not like anything else.